Again, I'm Dan Roberts. I'm the host of the Tech Whispers podcast, which is one of the things that we do to continue to feed thought leadership to all of you who are passionate about learning and growing, continue to learn from the best people. Michael and our team have done a really great job in launching a new short video series. We call it Inspiring IT Leaders. And these are 5-minute videos with great words of inspiration from our best CIOs. So be on the lookout for those. We dropped one today from Julie Colvin, who wore the hats of Chief Technology Officer and Chief People Officer at the same time. So she shared one of her great Julieisms. So best 3 minutes and 30 seconds of learning you'll get all year. So go check that out. So we love doing that because we know you are leaders as learners. We always want to continue to help you be leaders as teachers. So that's all part of the series. And then we do these fun things like we shine the light on people like Ben Pfahl and his journey. And, I'm really excited because the whole notion of learning, elevating your game, whatever your career goals are, how do we do this well? And I can't think in my 30 plus years in the industry of a better succession than the one that Ben was the beneficiary of. And I'm really excited because the person who helped orchestrate that is here with us today. So I might even call on him today and get his perspective. He's been a longtime friend, Shoukat Ali Bhamani. You see him there. Shoukat, welcome. Glad you're here. How are things in Atlanta?
Pretty good. Yeah. So looking forward to again seeing and being a part of Ben's success. So again, I'm looking forward to see where he goes further in his career in terms of what he has demonstrated. So go ahead, Dan.
Wow,
and actually, from my standpoint, just actually hearing Shoukat's voice is actually putting me at ease because it's kind of like a comfort zone for me. We worked together probably like 12 years, so it's maybe a little bit less stressful than it might have been otherwise. So I appreciate you being here.
Good.
That says a lot, actually, because that could work in the other direction. And so I wasn't sure how you'd react. I knew Shoukat was coming. He was not going to miss this for the world. I wasn't sure how you'd respond. So, and Ben, just in the spirit of transparency, Ben, for everyone in the room, you've not done this kind of thing before, right? You've always been kind of happy to kind of be behind the camera, but first time, right?
But this is my first ever interview. Obviously, I've done job interviews. I've done recently a big job interview, right, for my current position. But I've never been interviewed professionally like this. I've never been part of even a panel or anything like that. So this is a first time for me. So, and Dan, I've listened to your podcast in the past with some of the other CIOs that you've worked with. And most of them, I try to use that as a learning experience for myself. And many of them have years and years and years of experience, in those positions. And for me, I'm really a rookie, right? I'm a rookie CIO. I kind of know my place. I've only been doing this job for less than a year now, maybe 8 months, and officially with the company, maybe just 3 months or so. So I'm hoping to elevate my game to the level of some of the other people that you've interviewed in the past.
Absolutely. Well, one of those people I interviewed, Michelle Green, she's got this great expression. She says, the land of comfort has no growth, right? So my goal today is that we all kind of move you all a little bit off that comfort, that comfort zone and continue to stretch. But Ben, we were all rookie analysts at one time. We were all rookie project managers, whatever our role career journey was. So it's just the next step in the journey. But do you remember, Ben, when I first talked to you, it was very telling to me. It just speaks to doing succession well. I talked to you, you've been in the role for a few weeks, and I said, so how's it going? Do you remember what your response was back then?
I remember 100%. I said it was anticlimactic, and you were kind of shocked by that.
Yes. Talk about that.
Yeah, and I think the reason is because, and this was really a credit to Shoukat, is he was preparing me, I think, for the last several years to eventually take this role, to take this position, right? So, I came up in the organization with a project management background, also a background in the application side of the business. But I think he really did things for me to give me exposure in different areas of our business where I didn't have that experience. So I could think of IT infrastructure was never a strong point of mine. And then we were building several years ago, we're building a new plant in Huejotzingo, Mexico. Large project, multi-million-dollar project, big IT footprint there. And he asked me to be the project manager for that project, which was, there are other people way more qualified probably on IT infrastructure in our organization to do it, but he asked me to take that role. And really, I saw that as an opportunity to stretch myself, to learn more about those areas that I wasn't familiar with. Also build some relationships with some of our people there in Mexico, right? Because Schaeffler is a global company and we're part of the region Americas, which includes Canada, Mexico, the US, Brazil. And this was also a good opportunity for me to work on an international project like this. So that was one example. He also put me into a position as our business demand manager at Schaeffler, which in a lot of companies, you might know it as a business relationship manager. But in that role, I was really exposed to all of our division leaders, all of the leaders, functional division leaders throughout our organization. I was really able to start building those networks and building those connections with our business. So when I came into this role, it wasn't the first time I had to talk to our CFO or our CEO even, or the presidents of different business divisions. I've already met them before. We've already had meetings and things like that. So that part of the job wasn't new to me. And that made it much more comfortable and an easier transition. So I think there was a lot of forethought put into the transition plan. And I was the beneficiary of that big time.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to tell a story here in a minute. You just made me think of, Ben, but what you've been talking about are these answer the call moments, right? And you've mentioned a couple of them, but when we pick at those a little bit, what we find is that those are the lagging indicators. The leading indicators is, what do we do to set ourselves up to get the call, right? So as you think back on your journey, and I think this is just good for everyone in the room here, what are those things we can be doing as individuals to set ourselves up to get those calls?
Well, in sports, sometimes they say the greatest ability is availability, right? And I think maybe the first thing that you need to do is make yourself available for this. I think you need to tell people you're interested in doing some new stuff, right? And not just be happy, just kind of doing the job that you're doing. If you express to your team, to your management, that I'm interested in growing, I think then most managers, most leaders, hopefully if they're good, they'll look for opportunities to give you those. And I think just showing that you're available is probably the number one thing. And of course you need to be willing to do it. And then throughout my career, I would say even from my first job when I was just an analyst at American Greetings coming up right out of school, I was involved with some big projects, and it was not being intimidated by big projects, not being afraid to jump in on big projects that may be considered scary and maybe intimidating to people, to be willing, again, available to get in those projects and then try to work really hard and succeed at those projects, because those are the ones that get you noticed with inside organizations.
Yeah, that's definitely a differentiator. We find that those who run to those projects, right, tend to be standout and can make a name for themselves, and it's also building those muscles, those confidences.
Interview with my former boss.
Well, the story I wanted to share was a company, and I'm glad that no one from that company is on today, because I can be a little more candid. But someone in your situation, in that vice president level of leadership, back in July, his CIO announced he was going to be retiring in January, so he had a nice 6-month runway. My colleague put his name in the hat, expressed his interest, which that was good based on your recommendation. And I said to him, I'm like, Greg, how's this decision going to get made? He's like, well, there's going to be a committee, but at the end of the day, it's going to be the CEO, which is often the case, right? And I said, well, what's your relationship with the CEO? And he said, well, I haven't seen him in 2 years. And I was like, oh, part of me was like, shame on him for allowing that to happen. Shame on his boss, right? For not setting him up, for giving that exposure, to be able to build those relationships, to be visible, to be seen. Talk about the things that I know you're very appreciative of Shoukat, but what are some of the things he did? You mentioned the Mexico project. What are some of the other things that help you build relationships, build exposure, build your brand so that when it came time, it was like, yeah, Ben's the right person for the job now?
Well, I think in our organization, and a lot of it goes back to kind of our vision and our mission as an organization. So it's not just me and it's not just Shoukat. Like Shoukat, when he came in and he really created our organization, he was looking to create this very business centric organization, right? And that's something that he and I are like completely 100% aligned at. And none of that's changed since I've come into this role, right? I think that's one of the reasons that Shoukat and I had such a great working relationship, is that we believed strongly in this business-centric organization. And you can't have a very business-centric organization if you're not engaging with the business, right? If you're not reaching out and developing those relationships. So it wasn't like what Shoukat did for me and kind of working with me to make sure I develop relationships. I wasn't alone in that. It wasn't just me. It was our entire organization. And it wasn't just people at the leadership level either. It's people throughout our organization, every one of our teammates. We want them developing those relationships with the business at different levels, right? Maybe you're not developing relationships with the CEO, everyone, but you're developing relationships with plant managers, with key users, with team leads on the shop floor, with the finance man, whatever group you're supporting. You're really developing those relationships, because if you're going to be business centric, you have to have those relationships. And I think the people side of the business is traditionally in IT where a lot of IT organizations fall short, right? Because historically people say that IT people aren't people, but I think to be successful now in 2022, you really have to have people, right? It needs to be business acumen first and technology acumen second.
Yeah, well said. It's definitely a difference between being part of the fabric, or being a piece of lint, right, on the fabric. We need to be ingrained, embedded. And Shoukat, this is not your first rodeo. You've been CIO many times, very successful, one of the most respected in the industry. Tell us about Ben. What do you see in Ben that made you confident? You knew he was going to be a great CIO, and as you think about just leadership in general today.
So I think I would go back to what I think you and Ben were just discussing about coming this as an opportunity for him. So I think all of us, everybody on this call and everywhere else in the world, I think we do come across opportunities all the time. Some of us do realize those opportunities and some of us don't. So the people who don't, they miss those opportunities, number one. Then the people who do realize this as an opportunity, either they take it or they leave it on the table for whatever reasons. I cannot do it. I don't have experience. I have other priorities. I can do this and this. So then you have a very smaller group of people who really see that this is an opportunity, take advantage of it, and then put their heart to make it work for you. And I think this is the distinction you see in Ben, that he's one of those persons that who could see the opportunity, accept the challenge, but then put his heart in making it success. And I think this is one of the key reasons he is where he is today. I think there are many other things that you could talk about, Ben, but I would say this is the difference. This has really made a difference for him, in my opinion.
Yeah, well said. It's and sometimes those opportunities don't come along very often, right? So we got to be prepared for the call, ready to make the call, answer the call, and have the confidence. And even if we don't check all 10 boxes, right? We still pursue that. Yeah, well said, Shoukat. So Ben, as you reflect back, I know you both very well. You have very different leadership styles. I mean, talk to that, Ben, in terms of, I mean, you had a lot of respect for Shoukat, but you knew you weren't going to be him.
No, I mean, and like, it's interesting because I think, again, I go back to our vision. I think the key thing for Shoukat and myself is we have a shared vision. We had a shared mission. And I think that's what bonds us together. And that from our entire leadership team in Schaeffler, I think everyone bought into that vision and mission. And that's what made us such a strong organization. Because if I look at the other leaders, we all have our own personalities. We all have our own way of doing things. But it was that shared mission and vision that really kind of drove us together. And it's hard to say, like, you know, what makes Shoukat and what makes Ben. If I tried to be Shoukat, I don't think it would come off as authentic, right? I mean, he's his own man and he has his own style that he's crafted. And, you know, it's part of, you know, how he came up in the organization, and I have mine. And I think we all have to understand ourselves and be comfortable in our own skin. Like, I think Shoukat's very comfortable in his own skin. I'm very comfortable in my own skin. And then learn how to use whatever your style is to focus on the mission, to focus on the vision. Because I even have a hard time putting into words what makes Shoukat style different than my style, right? It's just, it's different. It's just, you know, you like, you know, mint chocolate chip ice cream or Rocky Road ice cream. We all like ice cream, but I mean, and it's just kind of a different flavor. And people have their preferences, but I think you have to be true to yourself. And then you have to understand your own strengths and weaknesses. I think that's probably the other thing, right? I mean, I know I'm definitely not perfect, and there's definitely weaknesses that I have. And, you know, and certainly in this, every position you kind of go up the ladder, those could be magnified. So you have to be extra conscious about some of those weaknesses and try to tamper those down as much as possible and try to overcome those weaknesses and really try to leverage your strengths. And I think Shoukat did a good job. You know, we have at Schaeffler good processes for reviews and getting feedback from our leadership and things like that. And I've worked with him for many years, and I think he did, you know, give me a lot of good constructive feedback, you know, through that process that I used to grow. And hopefully I'm doing the same thing with the other leaders that I'm part of their reviews in the organization. And even before coming to Schaeffler, I must say, when I was consulting before coming to Schaeffler and working in other organizations, I was really blessed to work with a lot of great leaders that really I could learn from them. And I can take a little bit of a lot of people that I've worked with and try to incorporate that in my style, right? So, and honestly, especially when I was consulting too, I saw some people that maybe weren't so great leaders. Maybe there were some poor leaders. And I also have that other list of, these are things that hopefully I never do these things. So I also have that list of, these are things I want to avoid, right? And you kind of learn that just as you kind of grow up in the industry. So I think I was preparing myself, consciously or not, throughout this entire process, my professional career, just by trying to learn from the people around me. And on the consulting side, I would say, both from other consultants I work with and managers in that organization, but also from all the clients I work with too. I worked with some clients that were amazing, great leaders, and maybe some other clients that I don't think any of them are on this phone call. I won't use any names, but they're a little dysfunctional. And they had some issues that I could learn, okay, these are some pitfalls that I want to avoid, you know, in my future.
Such great teaching, Ben. You know, learn from everybody, right, at all levels. Those who know me well know that I'm a big stickler about words. You know, words matter, language matters. I study that a lot when I get to hang out with great people like you and Shoukat all the time. How we deliver the words, the pauses, right, the nuances are all things that allow us to learn to be better communicators. So I pulled out some of my favorite. I call them the isms, those expressions that great leaders use. So I want to kind of pick through some of those and get your reaction to them, Ben. Because
okay.
Actually, the first one.
I feel like I'm in a game show.
We're in a game show. That's right. And the prize is
not embarrassing myself. Okay.
That's right. You get to continue to be a CIO after today. The first one's actually not a CIOism. It's actually Marshall Goldsmith's book. What got me here won't get me there. Okay. And I'd love to get your perspective on that, because I think a lot of times people get stuck in their current role or they're not as successful in their next role because they hang on to certain things. They hang on to the stuff they like to do, their comfort zone. Mm-hmm. Talk about that journey as you've climbed the ladder, and you know, what do you have to leave behind in order to be able to go to the next level and learn new things?
So I think this is a good one. I think it's especially good for IT people. Maybe people from the engineering side too, maybe struggle with this, where we tend to grow up or start our career being very technically focused, right? I mean, I started my career as a developer, as a programmer, right? I wrote programs. I liked writing programs. It was fun. And some days I still miss writing programs.
And you're probably very good at it too, right? I mean, you were good at that.
I like to think I was, but one of the things that I've learned too is the really best, like all programmers, all developers in their minds, they always think they're the best programmer that ever walked the face of the earth. And so like when I was a programmer, I thought I was the best darn developer out there. Now kind of looking back, I realized I was probably foolish in that. And there was probably so many people better than me, but I like doing that. And we get into IT because I'm assuming we all like technology, right? We love technology. We love all the new things coming out, and you want to dive into the details, which you can do a lot of times. And really, if you specialize, early on in your career, but then as you start moving up, you start moving slowly away from some of those details. And you have to be careful not to get sucked back in too much of the details. And then the higher up you go, the more strategic you have to think. And I think that's something too, like from Shoukat that I learned, is that when you start moving up in the organization into a manager position, then a director position, each step you need to start thinking more strategical and less tactical. You can't, and the gray area and the balance is you can't completely lose it, right? You have to have some working knowledge, but you have to come up with that balance of what's the acceptable amount of knowledge that you have on a subject. And even now, there's some areas in our business from a technology standpoint I'm very comfortable with, right? And I feel like I'm good. And coming into this role, there's still areas where I feel like I need to improve my technical knowledge in some of those areas just to get to that base area where I need to be. But then I don't want to draw too much into the details because then I'm not really value add. So it really depends on where you're working, how big your organization, what kind of experts that you have, but you really have to learn to depend on your experts too, right? Develop relationships with your experts, make sure you've got the good working knowledge, use your experts as there's a couple people, especially I would say on our infrastructure team, that have done a great job over the last few months tutoring me and getting me up to speed on some of those infrastructure topics that I may have not been directly involved with in my previous position. And they've been very patient with me and have helped me get me to that level. I think I need to be at the CIO level, but I think that's the biggest thing. It is really starting to less detailed technical side of things, and then more, I think you need to start being more people focused too. The higher you go, you need to keep those relationships. I'll probably harp on that a lot, but Shoukat can tell you that's a big thing with me. Relationship building has always been, I'm a very people-centric person, and that's the way I do business. So developing those relationships are important to me.
One of the testaments of what you just shared that tells me that you've succeeded at this whole notion of what got me here, I'm going to call it a Benism. This is one of your first Benisms. You said to me recently, now I feel like I'm an expert in nothing.
Mm.
Good for you. And look at Nadeem. He knows exactly what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Good on you, man. Yeah.
Yeah, but it could be a little scary at the same time, right? Because, sometimes people will have the expectation. I mean, and we see that for everybody on this phone call. I'm assuming everybody here is in IT. So most of you have probably worked with users, and you work with your users and they just know you're in IT, you're the IT person, and they expect you're all knowledgeable at all topics IT, right? It just kind of comes with it. So it doesn't matter that I'm the CIO for Schaeffler right now. I'm in an office in Ohio. Outside my door, I very well could walk outside my door and somebody could say, "Hey, Ben, my mouse doesn't work. How do I, and it's, could you help me get my mouse set up?" And probably I'll be like, "Yeah, sure. Come on, I'll help you get your mouse set up. No worries." But, if it gets something very technically orientated, sometimes you want to be able to help. And I think a lot of us get into this job too, because they're service oriented and you want to help people. And then sometimes it could be a little frustrating because you used to be able to help. I used to be the person that used to be able to go to somebody's desk, or call them on the phone and be the superhero, right? Put on my cape and come in there and solve their problem and save the day. Now I got a person to help you out, right? A lot of times the best I could offer is I've got somebody, and so now you're more of the matchmaker, right? You're organizing it and you're just like, I can't help you, but I know exactly who can help you, and let me bring that person to you. But again, it's a little unnerving not being an expert at anything. I'm trying to get used to that.
Yeah. I want to push on that a little bit. I mentioned earlier my friend Michelle Green. She's now the CIO for Cardinal Health. So Fortune 15, $160 billion company. One of her trademarks, one of the things she is very intentional about is, I mentioned before, the land of comfort has no growth. She continues to put herself in situations where she's stretching, she's uncomfortable. The jobs she's taking are definitely stretching her. You've talked about how you create those discomfort zones, but can you talk about that more, about how you want to see people in your organization stretch, be out of that comfort zone so they can continue to grow and improve and continue to deliver more value and impact?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, for most people, diversity is a good thing, right? Diversity of experience, it really keeps them engaged in their job, right? I think if you have just the same thing over and over and over, I don't think that's why a lot of people got into this business. I think a lot of people get into this business because they like to work with new things. And so I think by challenging people and giving them the opportunity to work on new things, it keeps them happier, for lack of a better, expression, right? And this sounds pretty pie in the sky, but I really would like to have a happy team. At the end of the day, I want to have a happy team, because I feel like we're not going to be able to give good support to the business that we support if our people aren't happy within our organization, right? I mean, if you go to a restaurant and you have a server, and if that restaurant treats this server bad, they don't like their job, they're just collecting a check, how great a service is or he or she going to be able to provide you? Probably not that great a service, right? As opposed to that organization that treats that person well, that gives them benefits and experience and things like that. You can tell they're generally happy, they like their job, and that translates in that customer experience that you have. I think we need to do the same thing on the IT side, and one of the ways to make most IT people, I say most because maybe some people are happy just kind of staying in the lane, but I think for a lot of people, it's giving those diverse experiences. And I want to give other people the same opportunity that people like Shoukat and other leaders gave me, right? I mean, at least for me, this was a good pathway to my dream job. And I'll say that, this is really, I think I told this to Dan maybe when we talked a little while ago, this was my dream job. And I told this when I interviewed for this position, when they asked me, so where do you see yourself in 10 years? It's like, hopefully here, if you'll keep me, right? I mean, because I went to school for IT, and I also have a degree in IT and international business. And a company like Schaeffler, to be a CIO in a global company like this, I mean, this is truly something I dreamed about, as a student growing up. And what I saw for myself is having that diverse path, stretching myself, helped me get into this position. I want to help as many other people get into these opportunities as I can. And I think when your leaders are helping you grow, you create that connection and you create that continuity within your team too, where they're willing to go the extra mile, right? Because they know you're willing to go the extra mile to help them, and you have those relationships. It all, it can't be one way. They need to see, people aren't going to keep doing extra stuff for you if you're not willing to do extra stuff for them, and making sure you're keeping their best interests at heart and helping them grow.
Yeah. I often quote Churchill, and I see these traits, these qualities in you and Shoukat. But Churchill would say, courage is knowing when to stand up and speak, which is the pressure we all feel in the meeting as leaders, right? Everyone's looking at us. Courage is also knowing when to sit down and listen. And, I find you both lead with listening. You're really good at putting your people out there, letting them speak, letting, versus that. But is that something you're intentional about, Ben? Is that something a muscle you've built over the years?
Actually, it's something that I've worked on. And I think, Shoukat will probably agree with this, right? Shoukat's better at that than I am. And it's something that I tend to be a kind of a gregarious person. And it's not because I think I'm the smartest person in the room. In fact, the people I work with, I would pretty much guarantee you I'm never the smartest person in the room. And it's not like it's because I just like to hear the sound of my own voice. I think it's more, I just get excited, right? And Shoukat could vouch for that, right? I get excited about things, and then I kind of express my enthusiasm a lot of time by being very vocal in meetings. So I do realize there's sometimes I could kind of be a little overpowering sometimes in meetings. So it's something I've been really trying to work on for the last several years, is trying to restrain myself sometimes and making sure I'm listening to everybody else in the room and making sure I'm giving other people in the room time to express their thoughts. And what I've been trying to do as well is, even if I find myself really out there and kind of dominating a meeting, to at least have that inner thought saying, wait, you need to reel yourself back in. Let's try to engage everybody else and say, hey, what do you think? You know I said this, but I could be totally off base, right? Just because I said it and I'm in this position doesn't mean it's right. What do you think? What do you think? Give me your feedback. Am I crazy? Just because I'm saying it doesn't mean it's gospel, doesn't mean it's law. This may be just me thinking out loud. So I want to make sure I try to engage people in the room better. So it's something I work on, Dan, every single day.
I love it. Yeah.
And I'm kind of giving you a sneak peek into the history of some of my feedback conversations with Shoukat.
So this is so true. Ben is absolutely right. So this is one area that I kind of tried to coach him several times, and not because I was good at it, because I used to do exactly what he was doing several years ago. And I had a mentor, which Ben knows. He's our current CEO, Mark McGrath. And he's the one who helped me through that, because I was always the first one in the meeting who would speak up. And when I saw Ben doing this, I said that deja vu, so this is something that has to change. So I think somebody else helped me to change. I mentioned Mark, and I thought I had to pay back, and this is why I kind of have. And I'm sure Ben will do the same thing to others. So this is a good example where we all just learn from each other. I don't think any one of us is born with all these leadership skills. Maybe somebody could disagree with me, but I think we just continuously learn, and there is no age limit or position. You just continuously learn in your life about the leadership. So this is just a journey. It's not the destination.
I think that's very encouraging, Shoukat. I don't think anybody's born like that with that all those muscles. So like you say, they're learnable if you are. You're all smart, so you all have the intelligence, right? And then, how do we pull it together? I was just interviewing someone yesterday from my podcast, and he said it takes CQ, IQ, and EQ, but it's not what you think. He said CQ is basically competency quotient, right? So building those leadership muscles as you go along. The IQ is not what we think. He said the IQ today as a leader is the ability to connect dots. Look out, scan, anticipate, connect the dots, for your team. And the EQ is something you just said earlier, Ben, which is the whole people side of the equation, right? The human dimension, the empathy, that ability to put yourself in other people's shoes. And, the great James Dallas, who Shoukat and I both know very, very well, he's also an Orby winner. He retired as a COO of Medtronic. He's on 5 boards now. And recently, this is the Converge conference, Shoukat. He shared, he was challenging 200 award-winning CIOs, so the best of the best. And he looked him in the eye and he said, are you leaders as teachers or are you leaders as taskers? And he wasn't letting them off. It was like he was implying you're getting too much of tasking and not enough teaching. Does that resonate, Ben, as you think about his Jamesism?
It does, and I think the best leaders are teachers, right? Because one of the things I'll go back to again, that you owe it to the people on your team to help grow them, and you grow them by all those teaching moments. And honestly, that's one of the parts of leadership that I like the most. I like that. I like working with people that are kind of up and coming leaders, And again, that was another opportunity Shoukat gave me. There's a couple people in our organization. I could see at least one or two of them actually on this call right now that were analysts in our organization that are now managers in our organization that I've had the opportunity to work with, develop relationships with, hopefully coach and give my advice and work with them. And I get so much fulfillment out of seeing their success, right? I mean, when they get promoted, I feel like I get promoted, right? And I feel so happy. I mean, it's the type of thing, like I go home and I tell my wife, guess what? Person X just got promoted. And even she knows, she's like, oh, that's awesome. Because, and my wife doesn't even know this person, but I've been talking about this person at home and I say, oh, this person has so much potential. I see them as a future leader and, they're just great. And, I could be working for this person someday, right? It's that kind of thing. So I really enjoy the teaching side. I mean, honestly, at some point, I'm not even close to retirement yet, but when I do, I'd love to maybe get a position, at a university or something like that and working with students. I mean, Dan, I think, Shoukat knows as well, like I'm a coach. I work with high school students and middle school students in the past for coaching. And I like working with younger people and I like the teaching aspect. And I think that's, for me, it's one of the fun parts of the job. So I don't anticipate myself ever letting that go because to me, it's part of who I am. I really like that.
Love it. Love it. Tell us about Schaeffler. We haven't talked about that. I'm going to test your, great leaders are good business people. So let's test your business knowledge right now, Ben. What is your business? What do you do?
We keep the world moving, Dan. So, I mean, our traditional—
That's all you got? That's all you do?
Our traditional business is bearings, and actually sounds really boring, right? 100% really boring. When I started with Schaeffler, I was like, bearings, like snoozer, right? And it's really when I got into the business, I realized how our products are in everything, absolutely everything. So we have three main divisions. Our automotive technology division, which really supplies what you'd think of as your Fords, your Hondas, your Toyotas, like those automotive original equipment manufacturers, people that make cars, right? And then we have our industrial division, which is all over the place. It includes big companies that like John Deere, Cat, or Motion Industries, some people like that. But then other things you don't really think of. We have a large aerospace segment that they do things like the Black Hawk helicopter has our bearings, and the Mars rover has some of our bearings in it. And when you start getting into the applications of where our product goes, it's really, really cool. Besides the bearing, that's kind of our traditional bearing business, which is a large part of our business. We also have powertrain. We do powertrain components for the automotive industry. So we started back in the day, back when Shoukat was with, just starting in our organization as an engineer. They were doing clutches and discs, for manual transmissions, and then that business has grown into now torque converters and things like that. For automobile transmissions, automatic transmissions. But now our e-mobility line, when you talk about e-vehicles, we're completely changing a lot of our paradigm there and really working with new products that will be coming out, e-axles and things like that, that have software incorporated into. So we grew up in a world where our products were mostly mechanical in nature, right? And now our business is really going through a transformation where our business is becoming much more mechatronic, where it's a combination of that a physical piece, certainly still that engineering, but also the software component as well. And, for all the IT people here, of course, we think about all the data that's being generated, right? And so now there's the data element as well, and capturing that data. How can we use that data, work with our customers and how they can use that data? But really anything having to do with motion, starting with the bearings and transmission, but also those like e-axles, things like that. That's where we play at Schaeffler. And it is really a cool company to work for. So shameless plug for Schaeffler for anybody here. It's a great place to work. I really love working at Schaeffler. And when I came to Schaeffler, coming from the consultant side of the business, I was kind of nervous coming to Schaeffler. And one of the things that made me nervous is I loved consulting. And the thing I loved about consulting was the diversity of assignments, because I'd work for somebody in the manufacturing sector, then I'd work with somebody in wholesaling, then I'd work with a retailer, e-commerce or something like that. And I'd work with different businesses every few months. And so that was really cool. It was fast paced, diverse, learned a lot. So coming to work for one company made me a little nervous. Would I get bored? And I've been with the company, it'll be 19 years next month. I've been with the company, and I could honestly tell you that I haven't been bored for a minute that I've been here, because all those different divisions that I talked about, whether it's automotive or it's industrial or aerospace, I didn't even mention like our wind business that has bearings that I could stand in the middle of this bearing. They're so massive, for wind turbines and things like that. Those are different businesses, really, right? They're, because you could think of like, if you have automotive OE, there's only so many people that make cars, right? So their business processes are very similar. They're just in time, right? Just what you think of just in time businesses. We have to make sure that their production lines never slow down, never stop. We have constant stream of product going to their automotive plants. On the other hand, if you look at automotive aftermarket, people that fix your car, repair your cars, instead of having a constant stream of trucks, Napa has thousands of locations throughout the country where one location might need one part tomorrow, right? For somebody that ordered that, right? So now you're talking about very small parts. So the logistics that goes on in all those different business segments is so diverse. And as an IT person, we have to support all of that. So I'm on the phone with automotive people, then I could be on the phone with industrial people. And in the afternoon, I could have a meeting with people on the aerospace side. And I say I, but it's not just me, it's our entire org, it's all the IT, because we don't specialize in a division. We need to be able to cover it all. And because of that, it's really a cool place to work. And it really, it keeps you engaged at all time and keeps you thinking all the time, because you have to make sure you don't confuse one with another. And then you could, of course, then shamelessly steal ideas from one business and use it in another and kind of introduce it. And we actually kind of play matchmaker of ideas in a way within our IT organization as well, because we are probably, besides human resources, we're probably the one group that really ties our entire organization together, because we work with everybody, right? And I don't think most of our business organizations could say that. And even ones that do kind of technically work with everybody, they usually have a person that specializes, for purchasing, they have a person that specializes in that division, or even on the HR, they might have a person that specializes in the division, but we don't have specialists. We expect our people to cross the entire gamut of the organization. And we've got a lot of locations in the Americas too. I think we support about 15 locations throughout, like I said, Canada, Mexico, USA, Brazil. So very engaging. So that was my commercial for Schaeffler. If you're interested in Schaeffler, please contact Ben Pfahl. I'd be more than happy to get you some information. We're always looking for good people.
I love it. I love it. I would give you an A for business acumen, Ben. Well done. And, just describing the businesses, the passion that you have, knowing your customers as you do, kind of working backwards. As you were talking about the company, you made me think of a case study I read in business school a long time ago. Ted Levitt, HBR article, Marketing Myopia. I recommend it to everybody. It's still very relevant today. He wrote about, and we all know what myopia means, right? Just being too limited in our thinking. He said he used the example of the railroads. In the 70s, the railroads were almost out of business. They were almost like shuttered. And what they did is they stepped back and they redefined themselves as transportation, right? And once they did that, they opened up all kinds of opportunities in terms of how they served, who they served, how they brought value. And you started by saying, we're ball bearings, but then you talked about mobility. We talked about, right? So really interesting how you said that. You were in the TechLX program, you were the Leader Amongst Leader award recipient. You really came in, you leaned in. Marketing was one of the workshops, but what do you remember from that program? Anything that you took with you that has helped you in this journey on your leadership path?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that one, because I was going to go to marketing. And I think that's something that we need to improve on. I mean, when I say we, I mean my organization. I think it's something that, I think Shoukat started it, and I need to continue down that path. I think we do great things that people don't know about. And I think that's very, very, very common throughout most people's IT organization, is that you accomplish great things and it all kind of goes down, it goes in the background. And I think by nature, most IT people don't look for great recognition, right? They're happy, they get self-fulfillment out of doing their job and seeing it, and they know they do a good job, and they don't care if most people know. But I think from a greater business standpoint, it's important that the business knows why you're there and what you're doing, especially now when I'm in a position like this and when you talk about budgets and things like that, and why we need to maybe grow our budget or how we need to focus our budget in different areas. You need to have these success stories, and you need to be able to show people, well, this is what we're doing with your money, right? The business is investing money in IT. What are you doing with this money? You know, where am I seeing the benefit of it? And I think this is something that when it comes to like learning from Shoukat, and I think when he started as the CIO, I think something that was missing in our organization was a focus on business benefit and how we're tracking business benefit. And I think that's something he really pushed, and something I've continued on since I've taken over the role, is really trying to show the business what benefit they're getting from IT. Now, I don't ever anticipate Schaeffler saying, oh, we're going to outsource, you know, our IT to company X, right? I think we bring a lot of intrinsic value, but I always want to be in the position to show them, if anybody would ask at any moment in time, if somebody would call me right now and I could open up the books and say, these are the projects that we've done this year, and this is the value that we've created for these projects. You know, it could be efficiency savings, it could be cost savings, it could be opportunity for new business and revenue coming in. I think that's probably the most important thing there. And I think one of the things I really like about the TechLX program, it refreshed a lot of those values that I learned consulting, because a lot of what you cover in your program are what I'll call consulting skills, where if you come up like I did as a consultant, you learn those because, of course, as a consultant, you're constantly focusing on bottom line revenue and what advantage you're giving to your customer. Why are they paying, you know, for consultants to begin with? You need to be adding value. And I think your program focuses on how we can show the business where we're adding value, because if you can show where you're adding value, they may be willing to invest a little bit more in new things that you can do to add even more value, rather than being just a organization that's keeping the lights on, right? That's a very passive organization. Instead, you know, you can be a more dynamic, proactive organization, but you can only do that when you have those relationships with the business and they trust you to partner with. Right. Yeah.
That's a great for everyone's playbook, right? Just a great way to think about those things. You know, we're going to wind down here in a few minutes. I'd love to have y'all maybe just put in chat, maybe a word or something that you're hearing that you've noted, something that you've been reminded of, you're taking away, you're learning. Love to get your feedback. And then certainly I've kind of dominated here, but love to, anybody else want to jump in and ask a question live or in chat, feel free to do that. We've covered a lot of ground. Ben, you're really good at this. Really appreciate you going through all this. And one of my other great friends, Onyeka Nchege, he's the CIO for Novant Health. And you know, he is kind of builds off of what you just shared, actually, Ben. He talks about coaching people to be adaptable, be flexible in the moment. But if you don't have that muscle, because not all of us are good on the fly, right? He said, if you're not good with that muscle, be anticipatory, right? Think ahead and set yourself up to be adaptable. Does that resonate with you? Does that make sense what Onyeka is talking about there?
It does. And I would say, I twist that a little bit. I don't know if I agree 100%. I mean, I think preparation is the key for everything. And I think people look like they're really flexible and they can do things on the fly because they prepared really well, right? And I'm not going to lie. I mean, I knew that today was coming and I knew you were going to be asking me questions. I at least mentally prepared myself to say, okay, what may Dan be asking me? So I could, you know, I don't want to have canned responses, but I also don't want to waste everybody's time too. So I was really trying to use this as a moment to kind of reflect back on what are the things that help me kind of get to this, this position in my life right now. So, I think preparation's important. And for me, in any business situation, I try to prepare going into that meeting. I always want to make sure I know I've coached myself. What are they going to ask me? What's their concerns? Like, know the people in the meeting and know what their hot button topics are. So maybe they'll ask me a question, maybe they won't. But I'm trying to always try to be anticipatory of that. So then it seems like, oh, I'm very flexible. I can just do it off the fly, but it's not really off the fly. I mean, it's not a canned response, but I've actually put some effort into thinking about things ahead of time. So that kind of goes to knowing the people that you're working with. And I'm using examples working with the business, but same thing could be people when you're meeting with direct reports or anything like that, knowing your team, knowing what concerns they have, understanding, where they may have problems, and thinking about, what they might be asking you for, so you can kind of start preparing yourself. So you try to limit the number of surprises that you have. So I think maybe some of the people that show in a meeting or in an experience that they're super flexible, maybe they're also people that did a lot of preparation, a lot of homework ahead of time, so that they can be confident in the messages that they're giving, if that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah. I find the best leaders are intentional about they spend time at the end of the day getting ready for tomorrow. They spend time early in the morning getting ready for today, but they look through their calendar, right? They anticipate the meetings, they anticipate the conversations, they anticipate the naysayers. Who's going to come in and dump all over this, and how am I going to respond? Exactly. I don't want to respond emotionally. I want to respond in a certain way, right? So
right.
Great practice.
You should try to know your audience as best as possible, and understand where they might go with that.
Yeah, perfect. Great input here, Ben. We're getting some great comments. Catherine, thanks, highlighting the marketing, and Shoukat talking about what he's seeing now, watching you and listening to you, and Karen, love your perspective around connections, relationships. I always say, put yourself out there. We're all one connection away from changing our entire career trajectory. If you don't put yourself out there, that's not going to happen. And JW, which I assume is it Jorn? Is that the right pronunciation?
That's Jorn Vendelkin.
Do you know Jorn?
I do know Jorn.
Yeah. Well, I love the question. It's a classic question, as he says, but greatest challenge in the past few months, and the whole decision making, keeping you up at night, other than having a daughter who's about to start driving.
That doesn't keep me up all night. I'm actually looking forward to the daughter driving. I think probably in the last several months, and I don't think it really had anything to do with the transition in roles. It's just been more of a general business problem that I'm sure a lot of people in this room have probably been facing, which is we've had so much flux in our organization. We've had a lot of people leave our organization for various different reasons, right? And I think the world's changed a lot. I mean, the pandemic has completely changed the way people do business. Lifestyle changes, it drove a lot of things. And now, in a way, it was kind of rebuilding our organization a little bit in the last couple of months. So we lost some really, really talented people. Brad Demers, who I mentioned is on here, is somebody who worked in our organization, really talented person that's no longer with us at Schaeffler. But now it was kind of taking stock of ourselves, looking at, so why have we lost people? What can we do to make improvements in our organization to help try to retain our talent as much as possible? And then it's going out and finding new talent and bringing them into the organization. I'm happy to report at this time, we're in a much better position now than we were 6 months ago. A much, much, much better position. And we brought a lot of new talent in the organization. But because of, a lot of the changes that are happening, I think we need to kind of all look at our own organizations and see, how do we need to change organizationally to fit the world that we live in right now in 2022? And we've been kind of being introspective of that too. And even, one of the things I really learned from Shoukat is the importance of metrics. I've always liked statistics. I've always been kind of a math nerd like that. But Shoukat really was good at developing KPIs, or working with us to develop KPIs that really showed where we where we're doing well and where we have room for improvement, right? And we're looking at our KPIs still and saying, okay, now maybe we need some KPIs to talk about our internal side, our people side. Maybe we don't measure that enough. Our staff. How happy are they? We need to look at that just as important as the business that we're supporting there. So we're constantly trying to see what we can do to be that type of organization that people want to work for us, right? That they want to stay with us and they want to work with us. And so I think that's been my biggest challenge, and probably the challenge of probably most CIOs in the last 12 months, just because of the economic factors out there. But I'm happy to say I feel a lot better about it today, sitting here with you, than I did about 6 months ago. It was disheartening at times, but I think we've really bounced back well. And it's a credit to a lot of the people on our leadership and a lot of our staff, like helping out with that. So.
Well, I'm sure Brad had an elegant exit, as my friend Bev K would say, which also leads to respectful returns, Brad. Just saying. We can always go back. So I'll just plant that seed. But, just kind of in closing, some really great comments here. Thank you, Ben. Really incredible insights. Larry Quinlan, again, one of the best CEOs that ever held the job. He was the CEO for Deloitte. He had 10,000 technologists around the world. Just think of the complexity and the scale, right? And he said there's 3 ways to climb the ladder. And you made me think of this, Ben and Shoukat, as you were talking. There are those people that climb the ladder and they push people off the ladder as they climb. And you can think of who those might be, right? There are those that climb the ladder just purely based on their own strength, their own gifts, their own abilities. And eventually those first 2, though, like you said, Ben, where no one's perfect, we're all going to stumble, we're all going to triple on the way. Those first 2 have nobody to catch them when they trip and fall. In fact, a lot of times people are happy to see them trip and fall. But the third group are those who lift as they climb, right? And I just think of this great succession story you just shared, how those people lift and bring others with them and grow others, invest in others, give them the shot, right? Let them take the shot. Maybe they're going to stub their toe and trip. It's okay. But I just thought of Larry's story, and just an encouragement to all of us to think like that, right? You all are smart. You're all climbing. You're all doing great things. You can all probably get there on your own strength and own gifts, but lift as you climb. And I think you'll have people there, as you have been, who will catch you, when you stub your toe. Because we all, at your big job, we still stub our toes sometime.
I'm sure. And I think it's a great point. And it's one of those, you hope you do things the right way, right? I mean, I really hope I do things the right way. And honestly, when I came into this new position, I really got a lot of positive affirmation from our team, because so many people came to me and asked me how they could help, right? And it was actually, I got a little emotional about it, because, and it wasn't just, other directors and people that I've worked with. I mean, it was I had a line of people at my virtual door asking, what can I help? I know you're going to have to be working on 2 positions in an interim basis. Can I take a little bit of your responsibility here? I'd be happy to help any way I can. And it really made me feel so strong. Again, like, I am blessed. I inherited just an amazing team, and I'm just doing my best to make sure we take them one level higher and just keep moving forward. But that kind of gave me that affirmation that hopefully I did do it the right way, because I certainly don't want to be one of those people that are shoving people out of the way to get up the ladder. It was never my intention. And I was just always just trying to do the best for the company and do the best for my team. And I think with those as my guiding principles, I think usually you're going in the right direction.
Well, that's a great place to wrap it up. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Shoukat. Thank you, everyone, for hanging in there. Yeah. Nadeem, good to see you.
Hey, sorry, didn't want to interrupt. Is it possible to ask a couple of questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much. I think this was amazing. And Dan, you might probably don't like it, but for me, so I'm in cohort 8 right now, and I think this conversation for me is probably at the top, right, from all the different workshops I've had, because this gave me a look into, you have Ben, and you are someone who was mentored by, Ben was mentored by. So I think this was very, very insightful for me. I got a lot of gem. I've been taking notes. I have like 3 pages of notes. So a couple of things, Ben, I would like to take up you on your offer, right? I've sent both you, Ben, you and Shoukat a LinkedIn invite. So if you can accept that, maybe a 30-minute anytime when you have free, I would like to see I like to see what the mindset, right? Learn more about the mindset. Couple of questions you had mentioned different things. So you mentioned that you always wanted to be here, right? Since you were in college, you were looking, I guess, to be a CIO. If someone asks me, Nadeem, what do you want to be? I still struggle for that because I don't know if if it's a ladder approach, right? Hey, I want to be a director, VP, CIO, right? I'm
Mhm.
still struggling with it. And to me is, hey, put me in a position, hey, Nadeem, go solve it. So I've been struggling with that. So the question for you is, do we have to have that mindset? No, you have to be a CIO, and this is how you work towards. Second question is,
Could I
uh,
ask you, could I answer the first question before I go
yes,
to the second?
please,
Okay.
yes.
Um, for me, I would say no, you don't. And really, I said I was in my dream job because I was a CIO of a global company, which is true. But really, my dream when I was a student, I always wanted to be a leader, right? I always aspired to be a leader. So it was more from a leadership perspective than a position perspective. Like when I was a director and I reported to Shoukat when he was a CIO, he probably, I mean, I hope he knows I never coveted his job, right? I was never like, oh, I can't wait for Shoukat to be out so I could be in, right? And I was never that sure. Like, I mean, first of all, I was as surprised when Shoukat left for another opportunity. I was probably more surprised than anyone. And I was very, I loved my previous job as an IT director because I was in a leadership role, great team, and I was kind of that was part of my dream right there. So my aspirations was never to CIO necessarily. It was more the leadership side of things. Like um, and I really aspire to have winning teams too. Like I think that was kind of my aspiration too, is like I like the coaching aspect of it. And I really want, our team to be a winning team. And really it's the team success. And if I could be in the background, help guiding that team to victory, then I'm perfectly happy with that. And that's really where I get my juice from. It is really the leadership side of things. Titles, to be honest with you, don't mean that much to me. I'm not a title person. It's cool, but it's really the leadership side of things that I get much more juice from.
So if 5 years ago someone asked you, what are your goals? I mean, that's what I'm trying to see. What would you say? What were your goals?
5 years ago, I'm trying to think about exactly in Schaeffler what part of the organization I was in. It was probably to do better. So I think around 5 years ago, I was actually transitioning from the business demand manager position into the director of business application management. And so that was a big change for me because in my role in business relationship management, business demand management, I really only had maybe 1 or 2 direct reports. And then when I transitioned to this new position for me, the director of business application management, now I was responsible for the second biggest team in our IT organization, probably 40 people, let's say. And so I would say my goal there was 5-year goal was really to get that team to the next level and really develop the relationships inside of that team and to learn those different areas because I really on the application side, I came from more of a supply chain management logistics background. And now on the application side, I was tasked with learning finance and controlling and HR and some of those things I never really had to deal with in the past. So it was really more of a learning growth that I wanted to be at the best that I could be in that particular job. And I knew I had growth areas, and ways to improve in that one. So that's probably where I was 5 years ago.
And I'm glad you went there, Ben, because Satya Nadella, who's taken Microsoft to levels that people never thought was possible, his mantra, Nadeem, is we're going to pivot from being a know-it-all to a learn-it-all company. He did that on a global company scale. And I think on an individual scale, if you have that as your goal, that learning, because it's interesting, but most CIOs that I know would refer themselves as accidental CIOs. right?
Yeah.
So it's true, right? And so
Yeah,
it's
that's a good point.
and a lot of people shouldn't be aspiring to CIOs anyways. I mean, it's not for everybody. That is not work that you want to take on unless it's your thing, right? It's the duck on the water, you know. The bends and the Shoukats at the on the above the water, they're graceful and it looks so good and smooth, and under the water, man, it's intense, right? It's chaos under the water. No one sees it, but that's the reality of it. But I don't know if that's all.
Then from two questions that Nadeem is asking, and maybe Nadeem, if you want, yes, we could set up a short call and have some one-on-one. But I think from your two questions, I think again, what I'm getting out of it, that people are looking for some path moving forward. Yes, they want to set some goals and say they want to be in certain positions, some roles, some positions, some leadership within X period of time. And I think it's always good to have that plan. Always, I think it's always good to have that plan in front of you. But more importantly is that be careful that that plan is not holding you down, because a lot of opportunities are going to come around your plan. So it's good to have a plan. So at least you're working and moving forward. But as Dan said, most of the opportunities are going to come not according to your plan. And then just be ready, as I said earlier with Ben, that he was always ready to take the opportunities. And I think this makes him successful. I don't know the exact wordings, Dan, you could correct me, but I believe Richard Branson said once, and I'm going to paraphrase where he said that when opportunity comes in your way and you do not know how to do it, just say yes and then figure it out. Okay.
Yeah.
So
He's done okay. He's done okay, Shoukat.
yes, yeah. So I think again, good to make a plan, but make sure your plan is not holding you down.
Okay. All right. Very insightful.
Mike Tyson, a different story than Branson, but Mike
I
Tyson.
know this quote too, where Dan's going. This is a great
You say
quote.
it. What does Mike Tyson say about the plan?
I think everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face.
I think he said everyone I fought against had a great plan until I punched them in the face.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That plan, but I've never heard it put that way, Shoukat. A plan can actually hold you down if you stay very rigid fixed on it. And the best leaders today, I find there's 5 attributes just consistent. I call it leading with heart, HEART. And you've checked them off today. The two of you. They have humility, they have empathy, they are adaptable, just what you just talked about. They've got a plan, but they're adaptable, they're resilient, and they're transparent. But it's not as simple as that, right? They also keep people accountable. They also continue to have the hard conversations, and they get stuff done, right? They deliver results. So that lead with heart, I think, is just very helpful for people today. But yeah, thank you for adding that, Shoukat. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for hanging, everybody. It sounds like you've got some new friends, Nadeem. So thanks
I
for.
hope so. I was waiting
You're
for them
great.
to send me an acceptance.
These are genuine guys, so I know they mean it, and appreciate you all joining and your feedback. We'll get the recording out to you. So if you want to hear this again, if you want to share it with folks, you'll have that. And Michael shared some resources with you. So great to see you. Reach out to us if we can be helpful to you.
Thank you so much.